Welcome back to Let's Talk Race in Ireland. I'm your host, Harrison Paul. So, a little bit of drama going on in Ireland at the moment. There was a domestic situation on the 20th of October. It's like every year they do a culture night in Dublin. And, you know, upon with all the other festivals that were happening in Ireland at that time, everything else went smoothly, right? There were other festivals that were there, and Ireland, they like to drink as well. So there was drinking there. It wasn't a situation of drinking. Neither was a situation of violence, because it turns out that Culture Night was crashed by the police, and I'm going to put some footage on the screen for you guys to see it. Was really ambushed by the police, and just police apparently created a lot of confrontation and just created beef on this night that really was not there, really manhandling young people for no apparent reason. And I can trust black people were being safe that night and just kind of conducting themselves in a respectable manner. Specifically, the owner of Tola Vintage, I know that guy personally, and I'm probably all of Dublin do, and he's a guy who takes his business very seriously. So although he has this block party every year, I really do doubt that this would be the year, especially during this time of what was going on in terms of this far right and all this, conflict that's happening in news. I really doubt that this would be the year that he would allow his party to turn into something that would really play into everything that they've been saying about black people. The racists have been saying about black people. So it's a kind of, complicated story. It's a funny story here. And I wanted to just kind of unpack this as a family on this show today. We're going to unpack this. I also want to talk and touch on African Stream being removed from Instagram. Now, this is a huge story. African Stream is one of the biggest pages. I'm fortunate enough to have my stuff, quite often shared on African Stream, and that is the page, like the epicenter of African, information, decolonizing the mind, all these sorts of things. And to think that we actually we were deplatformed essentially, and I remember just seeing the post, we have been removed, and then the guy who kind of helps my posts get posted on there, I messaged him about it. He was like, yeah, man, if you check again, even the backup page has been removed. And I'm going to tie these two stories in today for you guys to understand this, right? So let us talk about, the concept of African people in Ireland, right? I did a post, I had a statement on Instagram, and I'm going to actually, let me read the statement for you really quickly. I said, folks, it's interesting what transpired on the 20th outside Tola Vintage, especially because it seems the current far-right countenance has successfully infiltrated the police force. Now, this is not surprising, as even the concept of the far-right to me is dangerous. There was a high level of racism in Ireland before this new buzzword arrived. Racism that came from ordinary people from all walks of life. This just reminds me of how important it is that we start living this fight, not just showing sporadic spikes of emotion. What I mean by that is, I understand we have allies we don't want to scare away, but if they are real allies, they won't be frightened by your intensity towards annihilating this issue. These kumbaya anti-racist movements, year after year, do absolutely nothing. I quit kumbayaing. I proudly fly the uncompromising flag. It has scared many people away, yes, but those are not the people fit to shape tomorrow. Racism is so deeply embedded in our society that it's difficult for the masses to come to terms with how it has shaped them subconsciously. One of the many benefits of flying the very uncomfortable, uncompromising flag is that when we reach these checkpoints of stubbornness, we don't bank on education fixing them. Moreover, many Africans are afraid to launch into the lonely and uncertain deep, so we end up compromising the new standards we are pushing to set. What will fix racism in Ireland? It's not another campaign. It's black consciousness. A conscious black community is beyond manipulation by superficial campaigns. Our fear of rejection, our fear of seeming too much, our ability to laugh it off with all 32 teeth showing. This is a downfall of every single operation, because to the African, falling out with his master is not worth anything in the world. And this is such a broad term, right? And I spoke to a lady who shared it for me, a friend of mine, and she said, you know, Harrison, I really love the tone you were saying. When you become a community that cannot be messed with, that's when the job is done, you know. And it's a mentality in which, you know, I understand in these moments. I do understand the people who've taken the route of like, you can't just keep being in the victim's place. You know, I'm not gonna keep complaining. I'm gonna make the most of what I've been given. And I understand that there's a level of strength that we want to exude as black people of like, even if they go to radical racism again, I'm going to just show that I am not weak and I'm not going to give it airtime. Although this has been the only route that some of you have found yourself being the only route to take. You know, you found yourself at this crossroad, at this dead end where it's like, listen, at this point, I have to be able to take it on the chin or else I'm going to be crying every single day. Unfortunately, that is a mentality, a road you were driven down due to your fear. Really, what we are supposed to do is we are supposed to up the intensity of the punishment for crossing us as a community. And how do we do that? We organize ourselves. Now, we have loads of discussions around how does the black community organize ourselves? What is it that we need? Do we need our own banks? Do we need our own this? Do we need our own that? And the reason I do this page is because I understand that without a community that has a consciousness that is unwavering, when it comes time to these, and like I said, those uncertain, lonely times where you can be exiled from the white society around you, when it comes time that you can be demonized as the difficult black person and the one that's too much, and you can lose your livelihood many times, or lose people around you who kind of see you as, listen, you're making me uncomfortable, so to alleviate the discomfort, I'm going to push you away. And when you have lived a life as an immigrant, especially an African European, assimilating, not just integrating, assimilating subconsciously is the most important thing. That's why I said they're falling out with his master is nothing is worth that in this world. Not even his freedom. So ideas begin to flow into the hands of the people who are willing not to compromise standards they're setting. I'll give you an example. Let's look at the Jews, for example. The Jews, I don't think the Jews sit down and have a meeting about, let's open a bank. Okay, obviously they had to have opened the bank, but hear me where I'm going with this. They didn't say, let's open a Jewish bank, or let's do this Jewish agenda, or let's do anything successful you see the Jews do. Okay, I don't think it happened like that. I think because they don't suffer racism the way the black community suffers racism, I think because racism doesn't make a Jew stand out like a sore thumb, stick out like a sore thumb and be discriminated and be exiled and be alienated the same way it can make a black person be alienated. The trauma within the community is not as severe it is with the black community. See, as a black person, when you walk into a room, let's say, be it corporate, be it any place, you're already alienated because of your nature, your skin, who you are. Many of the Jews today who we see, you won't even know that they're Jewish until they put the hat on. This works to their advantage, right? Because at the end of the day, it is a white person. So when we face this hurdle, and should I say, because they don't have this, they were able to retain a level of self-determination. they were able to retain a level of dignity. So when they had the tragedy that happened to them as a community and all the things that they went through as a community, because it didn't seep deeply into the psyche of the Jew, the way it is of the African, this is why I do this page, because there's so much to unpack, the damage on the mind of the African, where he sees himself as 3/5 of a human being, and that legacy still lives inside of him, that he is forever trying to westernize himself and abandon what it truly means to be different in order to fit in to the imperialist idea of what a human being should be. And because the Jewish man is not facing that as severely as the African man is, when self-determination comes on his mind, he is self-determined enough and ideas flow within a self-determined community. These ideas begin to flow, behaviors are natural, and then before you know it, people are building a bank together. And then we call it a Jewish bank. Or they're building wealth together, or they're building whatever they build together. And then we just then call that a Jewish whatever, a positive Jewish thing. But really it originates in each individual having a level of self-determination that when they go out and meet the next Jewish person, it translates and enables them to communicate that. Now, when I talk about the severity of what the black community went through, hear me out. Because the black community are running away from who they are, when they see another man like them or another woman like them, without you knowing, there's a level of self-hatred. I met another brother today. I love talking to African brothers when I meet them. The ones who still have the African accents, you can tell they just came. And they say to me, man, I say to me, bro, you know, I like to connect with brothers. I always say I like to connect with brothers, you know, and whatever. He goes, thank you, man. He goes, what's going on here? I come here and it's like nobody wants to talk to you. I said, bro, you're gonna be really suffering here. If the person has a British accent or a European accent, forget it. You try to walk on the street and see them act like they don't know you. Yeah, I'll be walking around like it's Wakanda. I don't care. I'll be walking around like it's Wakanda. And the thing about the African people is like they come for that safety. They're in a no man's land and they're looking, and then they're finding black people just act like you don't know you, act like they don't see you, act like you don't exist. Why? And he said, why is that? And I wanted to get really deep with him right there in the gym, but I couldn't. I just said, but I will do it here. It's because subconsciously he's trying to detach himself from being too, I don't know how to explain. I even said to the brother, but I can guarantee you call those same brothers and you will see how they greet white people with the cheerfulness. Because subconsciously, there's something we are trying to drift towards and there's something that we are drifting away from. That does not mean that that person does not have any black friends at all. Of course he may. It's just a natural instinct that's happening here of like, he's come to Europe and wondering, why don't we cling to each other? Because we were taught to hate ourselves. So why would you cling to yourself? You cling to what you were taught will advance you. Please hear what I'm saying here, brothers and sisters. So we're all pushing to move up the ladder. The next brother or sister can't do that for you. Building good rapport in your community with most white people can do that for you. Are you following what I'm trying to say? So this is internalized racism. So because we have these issues, you're wondering why we don't build banks. And I hate people like Tyrese getting on podcasts with Shay and just talking crap like, why can't we be like the Mexicans? Because you don't even understand the history of what's going on with Africa. The damage is so severe. The survival mechanism is so severe for him. You can't put him on the same boat as a Jewish man. You can't put him on the same boat to walk in a room. At least I would much rather be considered a person who's greedy, gets his money right, but greedy. Because that's what the Jews get. They may have more, but this idea that they get wealth and they will keep going at it. Oh, goodness. It's way better than walking in and someone questioning your competence as a human being. He's African. Is he competent enough to operate in this space? So you're forever on the treadmill to prove your competence, to prove you're not 3/5 of a human being, to prove you're just as intelligent as that next white man in a suit. Because we all know life has taught us that you put a black man in a suit and a white man in a suit. Well, who have we ever seen running the countries? Who do we ever see at the top places? Who do we ever see in different spaces? So you're running away from being perceived as a ghetto person. You can't even wear your night tracksuit if you're a brother like me, because you're scared they're going to misjudge you. You work hard on your character. You want to be considered an intelligent young black man, impressive young black man. You can't even put on a night track because they're going to put you in a ghetto space. Yet another man who's in the same class as you, probably earns the exact same as you, could put on a night track and just be considered a man in his lounging wear. We're not the same. And when people try to equate, anyway, he's an actor. He's not a spokesperson for the black community, so I shouldn't be angry at people like Tyrese. Honestly, I should just get over it. But this is what I'm trying to say to you. Now it brings the most point that I was saying. This level of consciousness, ideas flow there. So how I know that consciousness is the root and it is the beginning of every solving of every problem that we have. Because it is with the mind that we were defeated. It is not with the funding. If you wonder why African leaders, if you want to complain, if there is some form of corruption, I don't like to call it that because corruption means that it's all in the hands of the African. He is benefiting solely off the wealth. He is under control and he takes crumbs because that's really his only option. His other option is to dodge death 100 times. Maze. And I don't expect any Joe to have that kind of capacity. That's why the ones who did were blown their brains out, had their brains blown out, and we don't even recite their journey in today's African history. But guess what? Pages like African Stream do that. We connect the dots. We look at the people who were shot off, not forgetting them. Can you believe Kwame Nkrumah? His books are not being taught all around Africa. One of our greatest African revolutionaries, that will be like Sir Winston Churchill not being talked about in the UK. How silly is that? African understanding of the journey. If you forget your history, you're damned to repeat it. Understanding our journey, understanding even the lies of today, where we believe the West to be people who tried to come to Africa and to implement democracy. Democracy. Where we understand things. Where did I learn who the IMF were? Where did I learn how they exploit Africa? Where did I learn how they make the iPhones and how they exploit Africa? Where did I learn all these exploits? African Stream. Pages like this. When we build the consciousness of the community, guess what? If you're a black boy who's studying law, you take your new understanding, mix with your consciousness, and you use it in the field that you are. If you're a black woman studying, I don't know, politics, political science, you take that with you. You take that and mix it with your consciousness, black consciousness, and you make moves for us as a community. The issue is that most black people did very well to run to Europe to get their education. The education you were given was one void of how you were going to dismantle the real enemy, which was the imperialist. Because who would educate you on how to dismantle his empire? And B, which is an answer and a result of A,
You have a bunch of Africans, qualified, degrees, but guess what? Do nothing for the community.
Do absolutely nothing for the community. So do we need any more brothers and sisters who are educated with no love for the rehabilitation of Africa? Or who spend time pointing fingers and blaming Africa because their newfound education makes them believe that they're above Africa? Because of their proximity to the imperialist and his design of life, how he perceives life, then makes you look down and not want to dive deep into the beauty and the perspective of what the African man saw the world, even if it's contrary to the imperialist version of how he saw it. And you are willing to combat it. Because that's what I found myself doing. I'm questioning this idea of success, the idea of life, that you have to be educated in that way. Who said our brothers and sisters in the rural areas are not educated, are not intelligent? What's intelligence? Do you have to sit like Jordan Peterson and talk like Jordan Peterson or the likes of those people to be considered intelligence? Can you get a rural man who can go bat for bat with John? Do we believe that a rural African man can go bat to bat with a Jordan Peterson? Or no? Why? Because his way of life was deemed more special than our ancestors, the one who built beautiful pyramids. Does that make sense? So this is the question here, brothers and sisters. This is the big question. What will fix Ireland? It's consciousness. I know pages like African Stream are so dangerous, my brothers and sisters, because that is why they removed those pages. That is why they're taking it down. That is why they're attacking it. Apparently they called it Russian propaganda. Because the minds of the people are waking up. And the last thing I'll say, and I'll end on this. I feel like I know what transformed this world, where everything's become so polarized of late. I think I know what did that. In my opinion, it was BLM. Of course, there was work that built up to BLM, but it was how the world stood. And for the first time, in my opinion, it was one of the only campaigns that you were not allowed to shoo off. It grabbed you. Maybe it was the COVID that helped to happen. And anyone who was a fascist or far right says, hell no, am I ever going to be forced to post the black square in solidarity. Hell no, am I going to be forced to be an ally at a higher percentage or rate that I plan to be. You know, when most allies who are allies, they give enough to keep for themselves. They give enough, and they keep most of it for themselves. You're wondering why racism has not been fixed yet, because they know how much to give you. But the way we are going to have to put people to the test is going to be so uncomfortable that, take it like this, there are real allies who love black people, who are unpacking, unraveling who they've always been, and it's been a very difficult period for them. I've seen white people go through I've seen myself go through rocky patches with white people in terms of them kind of realizing, wow, I didn't realize I made these assumptions, and that society had intoxicated my mind and taught me things that were not true. And how much work am I going to do to let this go and let that go and rewire certain things? And some people's too prideful and say, you're being too much. You should be appreciative you're no longer in chains. Who are you anyway that we should hire the standards for you and I should go through discomfort to make you feel fine? That's okay. Let those people do that. Like I said in my statement, let there be stubbornness. That's going to happen. And education is not going to fix it, because stubbornness cannot be fixed by education. Stubbornness must be met with uncompromising. That stubbornness must be met with people who are plastered in different spaces, using their consciousness to say, whether you like it or not, I'm going to implement it. Whether you're working in media, whether you're working in school, whether you're working in any little place. I don't have qualifications for everything in the world. So if you ask me, what are we going to do to free Africa? Well, I didn't study finance. So I can't tell you how we're going to do the bank. I didn't study, certain things that like, or health or doctors in nursing. I can't tell you how we're going to sort them things out. But guess what? There's a black woman right now or a man right now studying nursing. And if he mixes his newfound education with some consciousness and not mixes it with the virus that we have, where once you succeed, you want to disassociate, but then have this very superficial attachment to, I'm African. If we had proud Africans out there, with the amount of educated Africans we have, Africa wouldn't have been rehabilitated. We have so much smart and well-able, but their mind are not for African people. The difference between that and Jews is that Jews have smart and well-able people and have people who have a heart for rehabilitating the community, who don't have self-hatred or internalized racism, internalized oppression. So you're asking me how we're going to fix Ireland? The very reason they're taking down pages like African Stream. That's how we are going to fix Ireland. That is how we are going to fix Ireland. Become conscious, brothers and sisters. Let consciousness be the foundation of who we are in Ireland. If there's one thing I'm learning in African Americans, consciousness is like, there's a level of black consciousness. That's why they always echo things like black love, and they have stuff like BET. And there was a level of self-determination that became the foundation of African American culture, which is why they're so contagious worldwide. Because there's a level of saying, we have been discriminated against, so we have to go to bat for ourselves. We have to be for ourselves to a level, a bare minimum level that is far above anybody here in Europe, in Ireland or the UK. And we have to raise the bare minimum of, like, this is a bare minimum level of black consciousness, a bare minimum level of togetherness, unity, that we don't go below this. And you will see how much wonders that will have. That will move mountains for us. Because every black person, with their each individual skills and uniqueness, will add to the melting pot and put their hands together to create a voice and power in places where we had none. Well, my brothers and sisters, I thank you so much for watching. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
And I'm on a mission for you.